welcome. I'm your host, Stefano, and this is When Leaders Talk, a podcast about leadership, but most importantly, about leaders. This is episode 6, and we have a special guest today, a person that comes from very different environment compared to my previous guest, Jason Castriota. Jason is a designer. He's a designer in the automobile industry, and a very successful one if you consider that he's been working with Maserati, Ferrari, Saab, Ford, and he's the author of very successful and beautiful cars. For example, the last Mustang Mach-E, but not only that. So Jason has a very different point of view on leadership, and he's the one of a creative leader, basically leading a team of people who has to think through new designs and their lot. So I asked him actually about how the process is, what is important. We talk about failures, we talk about being vulnerable, because Jason said that it's important for the team members to feel part of the team, to take responsibility, to be accountable, and to take ownership on the teamwork. At the same time, they have not to feel fear for any possible failures. Actually, absolute transparency is what he recommends. So Jason is a very inspiring leader from many point of view, and I really enjoyed the podcast in every aspect, in every moment, and his special insights on, as I said, on a peculiar industry, a peculiar sector like the one of the automobile. I am sure you will enjoy as well. And remember to subscribe and to follow me also on TikTok, LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you want more information about coaching, go on www.masteryourc.com. Without any further ado, I will leave you to Jason Castriota. So welcome, Jason. Welcome to When Leaders Talk. And I'm very glad to have you here. And it's an honor, You are a famous designer. So it's really nice to have you here. Thank you for finding time for us.
Yeah, of course. No, this will be a lot of fun. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. So, we're not going to talk about design here. We'll talk a little bit about design, but it's more from a leadership point of view, how you deal with design. And actually, the first question I would like to ask you, that is my standard first question, is do you have a definition of leadership? And if you have it, can you share it with us?
Yeah, that's a great question. People ask that quite often. I think it really, for me, it comes down to, being accountable and really building trust in your team and taking them on the journey. So not so much a specific definition, but more kind of tenets to live by. I've learned over the course of my career that, maybe you see things that other people don't see. We like to say, in an ideal world, a creator sees around the corner, right? And they understand that there's something happening there, and it's very challenging to get people to see what you see and go along on that ride, because it goes back to the famous why, right? Whether you like Simon Sinek or whoever, some of the great speakers on the subject, asking that why, why am I doing this? What's my purpose? How am I, forwarding this greater initiative? And I think great leaders, what I've admired is they really do a great job of corralling and pointing everybody in the same direction to achieve a goal. And I love to use the phrase missionary, not mercenary, because, if you think of that conceptually, if we're all on this singular mission to get somewhere, and we're not looking out for our own interests, we're looking out for the greater interest, we will work together as one, as a team. And that's what a leader does is that, they have that ability to make everybody believe and see this greater vision, this future, and they want, and drive everybody to go towards it and create something really special.
Okay, so you say that basically you start with why. What if someone of your team members comes out and say, "Hey, Jason, I don't agree. I don't. I don't agree with this why. This is not the reason
That's
why
called
we
today.
lie.
It's every day.
Okay, so how do we deal with it?
Yeah, you know what? So I learned, in the beginning of my career, I realized that you have a mix of art and science in this, right? There has to be something instinctually that you see, you understand, you feel. It could just be seeing how, people are their habits are changing, or that there's someone close to you that they're like a young child. Like I have a younger son, and seeing him grow up has made me realize, wow, there's opportunities here, to deliver new product or service to them that wouldn't have interested me.
Okay.
Total data, you need hard data points. Again, we all know what they say about history, right? You need to continually look back. As much as we evolve, there's things that are fundamentally true about people that don't change. So I think that, you have to present a very robust case. It can't just be because I said so. That's the worst thing a
Right.
leader can do, probably. Why should I do this? Because I said so, because I'm the boss. That's exactly what no one wants to hear. And I think it goes back to, a really good lesson I learned, and I thank my former employer, Ford, for this, was that I really learned in such a large organization, it's so critical to get people to understand the reasoning behind the why. How and why did you get here? Okay. And, walk me on that journey. So taking them on the journey is not just about, hey, I've got a great idea, come with me and we're going to do this together. It's, hey, I've been studying this and this is what I see. And what do you think? And also, you have to give people that space to contribute, right? It's the and
Right.
proposition, right? We all know in a great brainstorming session, it's never, well, that's good, but it's, okay, that's interesting. And it's that build that gives people that psychological and emotional safety. I think, one of the more, radical, concepts was this idea brought forth by the hedge fund manager Ray Dalio, this idea of radical transparency, where everybody could say anything, and even to the point of being critical of one another, which can be very hard, because again, I think, some people better, with a little bit of guardrails, and some people can handle. Some people have thicker skin, so I think it depends on the person. But having said that, constantly what Dalio talks about in his book Principles is that if everybody has the psychological safety to contribute, you're just going to get more better ideas. And that's absolutely true. How you get there is a different story. I remember, again, in my last role at Ford, we were trying to, solve electrification. How do we make, viable, compelling, profitable electrified products, which seemed like a really daunting challenge at the time. And we started with a very small team. There was literally 4 of us. And then it grew to about 10, and then it was 15, and then it was 17, and it was 21. And even when it was about that size, we would still do these single room kind of all day brainstorming sessions. And everybody in the room could contribute, whether they were a VP or an intern. And everybody had to contribute something. And that was really powerful, because it flattened the hierarchy in that moment to say, hey, look, we're just here to create ideas, and we all add value, regardless of whether you're fresh out of school or you're a 30-year veteran in the company or the industry. There's something valuable to add. And I think that psychological safety of saying, hey, I can contribute, I can be a part of this, I can help shape and mold that vision, gives the individual more purpose. And then they are more, prone to come on the ride. You have to give them purpose. I like to say purpose will allow people to work with more passion, and then they'll be more productive. Kind of my 3 P rule.
I love what you said about the brainstorming and the non-judgmental part of it, and this yes and that is always so useful. Yes, what I like of your idea is this, and you add another piece. And it actually is great also in conflict resolution when you have, to negotiate a little bit between
Yeah.
two people. We're always work fine, and then at the end, you will have people converging to the same solution. All right, so what really I am fascinated is that you work in the creative world. I mean, everything that you do is about innovation and creation, and basically there is nothing that was already done like that. Actually, you start from the idea or of doing things better, right? So I'm curious about how you foster creativity in a team.
Always such a challenging question. I think that uh, people who are innately blessed with some kind of creativity, uh, they just need to have the right stimuli. But I would say that's for anybody. So even people who don't think they're creative, are actually far more creative than they even believe. I think it's a matter of having the sensitivity to understand what's the stimuli I need to then kind of advance or develop an idea, and it starts really with a growth mindset of just being curious. And I think where people who carve out careers as creators, builders, innovators, I think inherently they allow, from a very young age, they allow their curiosity to be their driving, guiding light. Okay, so it's less about probably less goal focused, from the standpoint that if you're always setting a specific goal, you're already kind of putting guardrails on something. I think, true creatives are able to say, boy, I want to learn about something. And they start learning and they uncover and they unlock, and then it creates inspiration, right? There's an idea, there's that light bulb, and you go, oh, wow, wait, if we just did this. And listen, it could be a small twist. I mean, what we've seen so much in the past decade with technology is that it's just these small twists that remove friction from our lives or amplify something we like, bring us more of what we like. And all of a sudden it's very innovative, and that's, every business is looking, across, different industries to say, how are they innovating in different businesses? Even in the world, in America, in the world of pizza delivery, if you follow Domino's Pizza, they've become a digital brand. They have an app. It shows you when your pizza is being made, the estimated time of arrival, all these little kind of gamified aspects that, again, engage the customer in a way and help kind of remove friction and deliver on the promise. And it's a really interesting twist on something as banal as, hey, I'm going to order a pizza and the pizza is going to come to my house. So it's impressive, and this is how brands are growing and changing. So kudos to the leaders of those brands that say we need to continue to grow and change and evolve to move our business forward, and that should then make it a more profitable business. It's certainly a longer standing business.
Yeah, well, I'm Italian, so I'm very careful with pizza. With all due respect for Domino.
Oh no, I'm with you. Pizza's religion.
With all due respect.
Pizza is religion.
Yeah.
We know this.
Well, this is another thing, and once again, you mentioned something that is very very dear to me, and in all this process that it comes to. Basically, it was something you mentioned actually earlier too. Like risk taking. Allowing people to take a risk, to say something, or to think about something that probably really outside the box.
Yeah.
It kind of weird. It can be kind of weird. So, can you walk us through like a meeting that you might have with your team, and how you manage this meeting just to have ideas going around?
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head, and I'll dive into that a little deeper. I think that as a leader, you have to show, while you obviously have to be exceptionally thoughtful in your approach. I think great leaders are very thoughtful and empathetic. So it goes back to creating that environment which is psychologically and emotional safe to strip away the fear. Because if you are in a risk averse culture, you're never going to innovate. You're just not. You're going to focus on incrementalism, Six Sigma, and not that there's anything wrong with that. I like to call it adjusting for inflation. If we just get 2.5% better, we should still be able to sell our product. That's not how you make the big leap, right? Again, with the onset of Silicon Valley in particular, and this idea that Google and others pushed of 10x. How do I deliver 10x value, to my customer, and then of course to the bottom line of the company. I think that to do that, you need to take away the fear. And I think one of the coolest stories I ever heard, and again, could be one of those urban myths, but one of the stories I heard was at Google, for instance, the engineers would actually take their kind of their failed ideas, and put them on a Post-it and kind of crumple them up and stick them to their computer, almost like a fighter pilot would put their kills, right? Back in the day. And it was really a badge of honor to say, hey, I tried and failed all these times. And it go back to, actually, again, very personal story. When my son was very young, we put an acronym on his wall for FAIL, which was first attempt in learning. And that idea that, we cannot succeed, we cannot improve, we cannot grow if we don't fail. And I think what's happened, what's really interesting is there's been a fairly big, shift in mentality around this. I think for many years, particularly growing up in America in the 80s and into the 90s, there was like this idea of kind of you had to be excellent and top of the top, and failure wasn't an option. And that, it wasn't about the yes and, it was, yeah, that idea is no good, I'm going to tell you how we do it. This idea of kind of, that was the rise of the superstar CEO and, the Gordon Gekko Wall Street, icon, these people who are just the smartest guy in the room, and they were very dogmatic. And now that's really shifted. I think we've understood that, again, more ideas are better, that, we have to strip away the fear that if you're afraid to be wrong, you're probably leaving a good idea on the table, and look, you have to be able to place bets. And if you're going to truly innovate, you've got to place some big bets. Now you measure those bets, right? Of course, again, we need to be thoughtful. We need to, I love the phrase, what are we willing to believe, for this future? So when we're talking about a brainstorming session, I have a team together. What I like to do is paint, kind of different scenarios, right? And it could be, again, how do we view the geopolitical landscape changing? What does that mean for society? What does that mean for consumption? So you kind of create this funnel, right? And from there you can say, okay, what are we willing to believe, for this buying cohort to come into buying power? What does that mean? What are they purchasing today? How are they shopping, buying, and using products today? What does that mean for a product of tomorrow? And again, you have to be able to really throw everything out there and war game and talk through all these different scenarios, which is really fun. It's stimulating. But again, if somebody's fearful of raising their hand and saying something, again, you're probably losing and missing out on a great idea. And, going back to my industry, in the auto industry, it was Toyota that innovated the vehicle line, where there was actually a cord on the vehicle line where the factory worker could stop the production if that person saw a problem that maybe, just because, again, it was CAD'd and engineered and studied, to fit together perfectly, in practice, in reality, there was something not right. Because again, you're talking about super high tolerances, right? Very, very slim tolerances as parts fit together. And they're able to actually stop the line, raise their hand and say, hey, I see a problem here. And they can try to actually fix the problem or propose a solution. That's pretty remarkable. And that's
so powerful.
It's empowering people. Again, I think people will surprise you, right? I think, again, we have this image of the all-powerful CEO. Everybody else is just kind of following that person's lead, when in reality, it takes a village, right? It takes thousands of people to create a product or service. And, it's important that all of them feel like they have skin in the game, but that they can contribute, again, getting back on that journey. And they have to feel like they're not going to pay the consequences if they contribute. As strange as that is, I think certain people we see it in grade school, right? Certain people are timid and they don't want to raise their hand because they're afraid if somebody laughs at their answer. It starts then. It starts very young. And we have to kind of unwind that and make people feel like, hey, look, you're here. We hired you. We believe in you. We feel you can add value, and that may be in your subject matter of expertise, or it may be tangentially. Again, I think, there's this phrase called T-shaped people, right? People with really deep subject matter expertise, and then tangentially they have other skills, other understandings where they can reach out around the organization, the enterprise, and add value. And I think modern companies are very good at finding those people, fostering those people, allowing them to develop, come into their own, personal development, I think, is becoming more and more important. And again, that's a sign of great leadership, right? You should want to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. I mean, that's another, that's another
Absolutely,
aspect.
absolutely. Well, and you say something once again very inspiring. One of the things you said, normally you people look at a team and the members say, oh, they have to work like a clockwork, perfect synchronization. What you just say is beyond that. Is like it's not just you are a gear and a clockwork, but you actually have the power to change everything around you. All can be small, can be a lot, but it's every element of this clockwork has the same power. It's so beautiful. I mean, it's I come from an environment. I've been in the military for a long time, where actually this was hard, especially for the lowest, for the youngest people. Normally they say, "Oh, you just arrived. You cannot even talk." It's like,
Yeah.
you're the freshman. So,
Hierarchy. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, there's very hierarchy and full of people that they say, "I'm always right," and some of them they actually think they're always right. And normally those are the people that will fail the most. But well, another thing that you said that was very interesting, about the modern style of leadership. How do you think leadership has changed in the recent years, especially, of course, with the pandemic that has pretty much impacted every side of our existence?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think we've seen the pendulum swing a couple times because I think that we went from this idea of the all-knowing, all-powerful, dogmatic, visionary CEO. Well, they were either the visionary CEO, like the founder, or they were the career manager. The idea of, which kind of is a fairly, believe it or not, a fairly new thing, right? It's really the last 20, 30 years that this idea of getting a master's of business and becoming a career manager became a career path. And that was still based on kind of, I'm going to be, the most disciplined, work the most hours, be the strongest, and rise to the top of the hierarchy. And then have that very militant type hierarchy, that pyramid within a company. And that was very typical. I think what we've seen over the last 10 years is, again, and hats off, tip your cap to Silicon Valley for really driving this, of the fact that very young, very dynamic people said, I'm going to challenge all the conventions. I'm going to challenge the fact that I need to go to work in a suit. I'm going to challenge the fact that I need to go to work at all. I'm going to challenge the fact that I need to go to college. I'm going to challenge, the conventions. And so the pendulum swung really far the other way. And I think the world was kind of still trying to find, I remember in New York, where I am, this idea of casual Fridays came into play, whereas Monday through Thursday, everybody was in a three-piece suit in the world of finance, right? And then, like, again, if you watch a movie like Wall Street, that's how everybody dressed. And then all of a sudden there was Casual Friday, where they would kind of come in slacks and a polo shirt. And it was this idea of how do we find the balance? With COVID, obviously, we saw an entirely new paradigm because people are like you and I right now working from home. As far as you and I both know, we could have on, our boxers or sweatpants underneath our suit on the top, right? People were doing fake it till they make it kind of homework. And now it's funny because I think the companies that have embraced the idea that, oh, wait, people can be efficient even if I'm not watching over the 24 hours a day, are very comfortable with work from home or work from anywhere. And they understand that it's a necessary perk, that people don't want to move away from it, because I think for a lot of people, it added to their quality of life, and the fact that they could actually see the kids, or they could have a little bit of downtime. There's other businesses where it's been more challenging, where either from a managerial side, they've said, nope, we want everybody back in the office. Or just because of the nature of the business, it is more important that people are together. So, it depends on what your network effects are within your, let's say your sector. Certain sectors, it's really necessary that you have a lot of people together. If you are doing primarily, analytical research, and you're working through Excel spreadsheets all day, I don't really think it matters where you sit in the world. You could be on a beach in Hawaii, or in a New York boardroom. Does it really matter? But if you are working together, putting together a physical prototype of something, a rocket, a plane, a car, or a building, it's kind of hard to be offsite. There's certain aspects that you offsite, but others you need to be there. So I think companies are trying to find their way. I think that this idea of what we've heard about a lot the last 6 months, quiet quitting, the idea of people kind of being burned out and saying, hey, you know, I want to find a better work-life balance. I think that's another really interesting, you know, obviously ripple effect from the pandemic. I think people began to take more stock in, boy, the world is fragile. Our lives are fragile. I could get a virus and I could die. And that's actually changed people's mindsets quite a bit, saying, you know, maybe I'm not going to push for the brass ring. Not that it's going to hurt my ambitions, but maybe I'm going to find a way to do something I love to do where I can also make a great living. And I think it spawned a lot of entrepreneurism. We saw that during COVID, right? The amount of entrepreneurism that came about because people were at home saying, oh, well, I have that side hobby project that now I can turn into a business. Or I have that, you know, I see an opportunity in the market. Like I could deliver X to the market and they create an online business. And I think that that's been really stimulating for people. So, you know, look, great tragedy always creates opportunity, right? You know, that's the reality. This is a really interesting opportunity for individuals and companies to redefine how they want to move forward, and certainly for leaders to take stake in, boy, you know, how can I make sure my team is as motivated and happy as ever? You know, and I personally believe that, you know, if you're trying to create a winning product service, okay, there has to be a joyful team. You know, your team, if your team is happy and motivated and working well, they're going to have a great output. They're going to have a positive output. If your team is miserable and unhappy and risk averse and counting the hours before they leave, I promise you that product's not going to be as good. It's just human nature. You know, we put in what we feel we get back. And so again, I think for leaders in this new paradigm post-pandemic, they have to find the right balance of how much do I ensure that my shareholders, that the company, that the initiatives move forward, but give my people a little more flexibility that makes them feel a little more personal ownership. I think personal ownership is important.
Absolutely. And one of the things actually the pandemic did was to push a little bit of reorganization, creativity, like a lot of ideas came out. I've seen, once again, coming from a world that has always been very working in presence, actually teamwork, very close. I've been on Navy, so ships is all about being together. And we found ourselves thinking, okay, how can I keep the crew united and efficient, even if they're spread out, because they could not be all together in the ship. So yeah, there was a lot of actually creativity around that. And you work through different time zones, right? I mean, I know you travel a lot, so I guess most of your work, or most of the people you work with, are remotely. You know, they work remotely, right?
Yeah. I've actually been doing it since, believe it or not, 2010. So I was a little ahead of the curve with this idea of work from anywhere. You know, when I left Italy and I left Pininfarina to start my own agency, which was, you know, design, brand, strategy, engineering, consultancy, you know, primarily for the auto industry. You know, it was very clear to me already we had all the tools, because the reality is everything we did was always done in CAD. And, you know, with a secure server, you know, we had people working all over the world. So why wouldn't I allow my team to live and work where they wanted to work? So I feel very, very fortunate, lucky, I don't know, that I had that mindset early on, because I had a great team and I was able to have work in different time zones as well, which actually made us more efficient. You know, and I do that again today. I find myself on planes more often than not today than I did in the past, because I have to be more on top of things. But yeah, I think that you know, it's very powerful. You know, if you can leverage more of the day, for sure.
And the other thing is that you have to deal with different cultures, right? Because we have people working, I don't know, in Europe or in America. Or...
Different cultures as well.
Right. Yeah.
Very different cultures, especially work cultures.
Right. So I guess one of the challenges you might face is actually going back to what you said earlier. It's not just telling the people why, but how you tell them why, right? The way you approach an issue. How do you normally deal with that? You know, considering, as we say, people coming from different places and everything.
Yeah, I think the constant for people is humanizing the benefits and humanizing the emotive aspect of what they're doing. Because if people feel this is just a rote task, they don't get very excited about it. Especially when you're talking about, creative, highly trained people. What I do love about, this cohort is they want to change the world in some way. They want to be a part of something, and they're willing to invest tremendously personally in that. So if you can really spark their imagination and get them excited, you can really extract phenomenal results. And again, I'm a big believer in empowerment. And when I was younger, I realized very early on, almost like a sports analogy, I was the one that wanted to take the shot on goal. And if I missed it, that's on me. And I will take responsibility for missing it, but I don't want to not be able to have that opportunity. And I kind of have always treated all the people I've worked with the same way. Give them the opportunity, give them as much space to run. And then, yes, as a leader, if you're guiding them, mentoring them, leading them, you need to at a certain point be able to pull them back or help them get back in the right path if they veer off path. But give them that ability to feel empowered. And when you give them that ability to feel empowered, you're just going to get better output. If they feel like they're always kind of held back, and I felt like that early in my career, I felt held back. It's very frustrating. And with that frustration builds resentment. With resentment, you say, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I'm going to change companies, or I'm going to go somewhere else. And the company loses value, right? And I think that, certainly in my years at Ford, I think that, they were very, very smart in how they continued to stimulate and challenge their leaders. So, we all got, nominated for leadership courses, and we got to do offsites, and they invested in us to say, hey, we want to help you be a better leader. We want you to add more value to the company. And more importantly, we want you to be happy. We want to show you that we believe in you. And I think that many companies do this, but I think, my last employer was particularly good at this. I think that's something that I learn and I take with me, even on a much smaller scale, even at a company of just a handful of people, 200 people or 20 people, let alone 200,000 people, right? You can do this at any scale. You can make people feel like, hey, I'm invested in you and I'm trusting you, and I want you to be your best. And again, I think that's what a leader does. A leader makes his people better by giving them the freedom, by taking away the fear, and saying, look, we're going to try, we're going to fail, we're going to pick up, we're going to move on. I've told my people for the past, this is probably at least 10 years now, anytime I've led teams, I've said, look, I don't care if it's never been done before, what we're trying to do. Don't say no. Don't say, no, it can't be done. You can tell me it's going to be really hard. You can tell me no one's ever done it. And you can also tell me, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to try. And I think it's really just a matter of even just empowering people in that way to say, look, it's okay, because so many people go, oh, they'll say no, or I don't want to do it because they're so afraid of failing. But again, if you're trying to innovate, you're trying to push boundaries, you have to be willing to fail. You have to. And again, it's the leader's job to measure what failure is catastrophic versus what failure is acceptable. But that's a different story.
And that's something that I heard many times. People trying to say, oh yeah, let's do this. Oh, we never done it. Well, let's try. The problem is when you don't embed in the same message, you don't embed kind of permission to fail. When you say you have to do this, you never done it, you have to do it in a short time, and you cannot fail. That's probably when the motivation of your employees go down. Earlier,
that's just stress. That's just pure stress on everybody.
Yeah. I saw that. I have my experience.
I'm sure. I've been there myself.
Right? Yeah, and it's so important. And one of the things you said about the investing in the training and formation of leaders, there is such a huge return of investment in that, and it's amazing, and it's something that probably in some contexts is hard to measure because you don't produce, you don't sell, you don't have a gain, but still, you will have other effects, probably in the medium long term, but you're gonna see the effect. Earlier when we were talking about the pandemic, you mentioned the balance, life-work balance. You know, I remember I read an interview from you about 10 years ago, probably something like that, and I was impressed by your schedule because you say, okay, I wake up at 5, read
Fast
email.
company. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I get up at
It's
5,
actually
read
gotten
email.
worse.
Yeah,
It's actually gotten worse
and it
since
was
then.
intense. How do you do with that now? How's your life-work balance?
So I have to say that I'm very fortunate to have very understanding friends and family and loved ones because they know for me personally, being inside the project and living, breathing, eating it 24 hours a day is what I love. It, like you see, my my physics just changed, right? I smile. It's a little scary, I guess, from the standpoint that I love it so much. It's where I'm at my happiest, and because of that, they're so respectful of that, and they understand that, you know what, better to have, you know, to let me be me and be my best self. And then when I have the time, it's quality time as opposed to me trying to force in being present, but really just being here physically, but not mentally or emotionally. Because, you know, when you're invested in creating something, it's all encompassing, right? It's not just your physical time, it's your mental, it's your to it fully. And you need that balance. You need to find those moments. And so to me, it's not, I'm not a vacation guy. Like after 3 days, I want to like, I go crazy. I can't do nothing for 3 days. It's really bad, I know. But, you know, can I take a day and go, like my moment of Zen is driving really fast. You know, can I go on a racetrack or in my favorite road and with a couple friends and we go out and drive for a couple hours and then go have a great meal somewhere? I feel completely recharged. Like that's all I need. Can I, you know, just take a nice trip with my family and spend a day enjoying them? Absolutely. But I'm not a like, hey, I'm going to take a week off. I'm burned out. I'm going to take 2 weeks off. I'm going to take a month off. I don't think I've ever done it. I'm just not built that way. I'm not saying that's normal or okay. It's not. But that
No,
being
no, no.
said, I think the bigger
It,
challenge is making sure the team doesn't feel they have to do that.
right.
And you know, I think again, if you talk about traditional corporate culture, especially in America, there's this idea of, you know, whoever, you know, arrives first and leaves last wins, right? It's a bit of that mentality. And I think that that's the wrong mentality. I think what it is it's quantity of effort and output versus time. If you can do something faster and you're more efficient, that's great. I'm going to be happy. Like, you know, I'll give you another task after that, but I'm really happy about that. I'm not saying that, you know, and I actually tell this to the people that are working with me now, you know, because they comment a lot exactly what you said. Man, you answer at all times. You're in 4 different time zones. How do you do it? And I said, doesn't matter. I said, you guys just focus on what you do. Don't worry about trying to match or equal the hours, or you don't have to reply to me at 4 in the morning. I know I do that. It doesn't mean you have to do that. Because again, that can be very demoralizing, you know, to people. I don't, you know, you want to, again, you want to empower them and make them feel like they're being appreciated for their efforts. And again, there are cultural differences, you know, working with Europeans versus America versus even Asia. There's different cultural norms in terms of what's a work day and what does work family life balance mean. As you know, as an Italian, it's very different in Italy
Oh
than it is
yeah,
in the
yeah,
US,
yeah.
for sure. You know, and
Yeah, but what I see is that actually the thing that I can perceive, you know, even through distance, that the joy and the energy that you take from your work. So you are one of those people who actually loves what he's doing, you know, and
I'm
it's a
super blessed.
privilege. I mean, right? Yeah,
I'm
that's a
blessed.
privilege. That's why probably you never heard this. You heard it, but you don't know what burnout is. You know, you never had the feeling of being burnout, right?
You feel it now and then, and I'll definitely say earlier in my career I felt it more because I think that, you know, in my naivete, in being young, you know, you have certain expectations that, okay, if I put in X, my output's going to be Y, and you realize that's not necessarily the case, and you learn that the hard way. And there's disappointments and there's resetting expectations, but along that journey you find yourself and you find a way to understand that, you know, okay, I can't expect things to just happen. I can't expect people to reward me in the way that I think I should be rewarded unless I'm like literally creating it myself. if anything, those early experiences pushed me more into an entrepreneurial path. I realized, you know what, maybe I'm better in that kind of path. So again, I think we need to always be self-reflexive. You know, my dad told me a long time ago, you know, every 5 years, you kind of need to take inventory and not necessarily reinvent yourself, but really understand, what were my experiences? What did I learn? And how do I become better from those experiences? And then, speaking with a lot of, really successful, CEOs over the course of my life, I recognized also that they are exceptionally adept at, taking each experience and extracting a different learning and maximizing the learning in that experience, and then adding to their move as they move on. And that's something that it's a heart. And someone told me a long time ago, you have to view your career as you're building a pyramid, right? The wider your base, so the more varied your experiences, more rich experience, the higher pyramid can be, right? Just basic mathematics, right? So I really like that approach, and I think it's caused me to remember always that, boy, there's always something else to learn. I think when you're young and you're successful, and I had that fortune to be successful when I was very young. You think, and then you go, oh wow, there's a lot more I need to learn. so you can either figure out like, okay, I've got to change my mindset and I need to learn, or you can brood in your disappointment and resentment that, oh, they don't understand me, and I'm going to just sit here and pout. But that's not me. I realized that I wanted to learn, I wanted to grow, and so really the last 10 years have been all about that, and the next however many decades will be about that. I learn every day, I know less. That's the reality.
Actually, what is the biggest lesson that you learned growing up, especially at the beginning of your career? What is the thing that you will always remember, and this part is in your backpack, it's always there, as a leader, especially as a leader?
I think it goes back to trust, of creating a trusting relationship. So I think where I realized very early on, especially in my sector, every sector is different, but in the sector that I work in, where you have massive teams of people who have to buy into a vision and the commercial viability of the vision, it's so critical that they trust your vision, where you're going. And so to have a very personal relationship with those people is important. I think to, again, strip away the fear and give them the confidence that, hey, we're going to get through this together, and we're going to win together. So again, it goes back to taking them on the journey with you. Those are the key things that I continue to hold constant. And there's many other things obviously that change. And then obviously, as you mentioned earlier, the pandemic changes things still, cultures change things. There's lots of variables, but for me, the constants are trust, removing fear, and having that accountability, and making people feel like they have purpose, the why. Very simple tenets. I mean, I'm sure you've heard them a lot before, but I think they become cliche because they're true.
Okay, well, now let's try to change a little bit, but tell me, because you say a lot of interesting things, and it's like I have a list of questions now. We can go on for another couple of hours, I guess, but actually one important question I want to ask you is, which is the biggest challenge you ever faced in your career, and how did you deal with it?
So the biggest challenge I had was certainly, I had spent I ran my own consultancy, and now I was walking into a big, giant automotive manufacturer at Ford. And it was a multifaceted challenge. First and foremost, from a cultural standpoint, this was radically different than anything I had ever been exposed to, because I had consulted with Ford actually prior. They were actually a client, but that was very limited. I saw one little piece of what Ford is and what it means to work at Ford Motor Company. So understanding the culture, understanding the politics, understanding where I fit and how I could add value, and most importantly, how can I carve out space and add value without alienating or putting people, I was considered an outsider. Coming executive role, there were a few executives brought in from the outside. So again, I'm an outsider, and I needed to approach this with, a different level of humility. And what I did do is from day one is I asked a lot of questions. I went around and I met as many people as I could. And even if they said, why are you here? Why am I meeting? Did happen, by the way. I just wanted to meet and I wanted to learn and understand the business. And I think the greatest compliment I received there from my boss, after my first kind of mid-year performance review, he goes, we feel like you've been here for years. He goes, it's really scary. And because I had adapted so well to the culture, and they're kind of used to kind of chewing people up and spitting them out, I think, to a degree. No, but it's a very special place, and I think that it was a great learning curve for me. It was fantastic. I feel very fortunate to have been there, to spend the time I had there, to be given all the responsibility I was given. I learned really what it really means to get a team together. Before that, I had worked with much, much smaller teams. Now you're talking about trying to move an organization, and being a part of the a handful of people that really help move that organization in a new direction. I take tremendous pride in that. It's really, for me, it was just a phenomenal growth and learning experience. And I take so much with that into everything I do now, I look back at it extremely fondly.
And what are your what are your role models? The people that you've been looking at that gave you inspiration to do what you do.
When I was younger, it's evolved. So, when I was younger, it was, obviously Sergio Pininfarina and Enzo Ferrari, the creators of these beautiful, amazing automobiles, which again, you see me smile because it taps me back into my childhood. How my passion for cars was born. Later it even became athletes, looking at someone even like a Michael Schumacher, who was so incredibly different how he approached everything. And I was there, in the Ferrari universe when he was at Ferrari, and it was so special to see him take this team that floundered for many years, and then make them into this amazing, perfect synchronized watch that just was dominant. It was really inspiring. And then, of course, look, I can't deny that the titans of Silicon Valley, especially over the last, decade and a half, like the Steve Jobs and the Elon Musks of the world, aren't influential. Of course they are. And I think where they've both been so influential is that they've not only they question why, they've said why not. They've really taken reason in their head. They humanized something. They humanized technology in a way that makes it special, emotive. It makes the benefits seem that much more powerful. And they've created a because of that. And again, by kind of going against the grain, whereas computing was just for business, right? Business machines, IBM, and Steve Jobs saw a future where no, the computer should be in everybody's home, in our pockets, even. Elon Musk, the manner in which he's upended a couple of different businesses, particularly automotive and space, is really pretty phenomenal. And, it's something that you have to admire, their will, their tenacity, their ability to continue to always question the norms. And that's something that, as I move further in my career, I've been doing now, because I think when I was younger, it wasn't about questioning the norms. When I was younger, I just wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to be, my dream, you probably heard this story, but, when I was 5 years old, I was sketching Ferraris at the kitchen table, and I said, yeah, go Pininfarina and design Ferrari. And everybody kind of looked at me, sure you will. And then, I was there, I was doing it, and I was a part of it. And then while I was there, it was like, well, I want to be at the top of this. And I did that. I was able to rise through the ranks and have my fingerprints on some really amazing products and be a part of something really special. thereafter, my goals changed again. And so I think, as I've learned and grown, the people who I admire and look to change, and it's not to say that the old ones are thrown out. No, they're who I am. And again, I think they represent different phases of my growth, and different phases of, what I'm now reaching to achieve myself.
So if you go back in the past, you have the opportunity to talk to Enzo Ferrari or Pininfarina or Steve Jobs, or without going back in the past, to Elon Musk or Schumacher, which is the thing they would bring to them and say something that you're very proud of. You show them, it's like, oh my God, you inspire me to do this.
I missed part of the question. I'm sorry.
Well, no, if you could talk to all those people that have been inspiring for you, what would you bring to them? What do you show them, that you are so proud of?
That's an interesting question. I'd have to believe that everybody. I don't know how people feel. Everybody's different in terms of how they feel about getting credit for inspiring. I even personally feel a little bit at a loss when someone comes up to me, or our fan says, "Oh, I love the cars you've done," and I'm almost a little embarrassed. I'm always like, "Oh, it's so like." You feel very honored, you feel very humbled. I don't know if those titans will feel that way. I mean, you'd hope that you'd get a good response. I believe you would. I think everybody loves positive reinforcement. Look, all I can say is it's undoubtable. You can't doubt that all of those people have worked incredibly hard to achieve what they've achieved. So I think that any kind of recognition, from probably appreciated. I certainly, have no problem doling out recognition where it's deserved. Again, these are people that have inspired me. I'm going to, be on this quest to be better because of the people that have influenced me. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's never been before. I don't know quite how to answer it.
Okay, that's fair. Fair enough. Okay, we have time for the last question, and it's one of the two standard questions that I ask. It is, if someone comes to you and say, "Hey, Jason, I want to be a leader. I want to be a leader like you." What kind of suggestion would you give to them?
I think that as I mentioned, as I've grown older and been on this journey, growing and being a good expert at what I did, to mastering a craft, to being a soloist, there's definitely where it was I'm going to do it my way, to then learning that, oh wait, I need to get people on this journey. I think that look, I as a leader, you have to be excellent at something. I think, and it could just be people management, it could be empathy, it could be, I think you need something that gives people a reason to believe in you. So I don't think anybody can just walk off the street and be a leader tomorrow. I think you need to obviously have some intrinsic value. Now that could be deep subject matter expertise, like you could be an amazing engineer or a designer or a writer, creative, but it could also just be you are somebody that is truly empathetic and understands people and understands how to talk with them and unite them. It could be, again, something more intangible. And then, as I said, for me, I believe my growth really began, again, my years at Ford, where I really understood it's all about getting these people to believe. And to get them to believe, I need to be far more diligent in how I explain how I got to where I am. And I think that I can certainly say for me, I learned the hard way that what I may see and may take as fact or obvious, a lot of people don't. And so I've learned I've had to be much better and much more transparent about all the information that I accumulated to get to that point. And this goes against the grain of common belief about leadership. If you think back again a couple decades ago, where information is power, right? So the idea is, I grew up in business culture where only the top people knew what was really going on, right? And everybody else was fed just little pieces. And I think a lot of companies still work that way, where there's a fascia of people that know everything, and everybody else, well, you don't need to know that. That's on a need to know basis, and you just need to know this, and you just need to do that. And I think in the future paradigm, especially with, I look at my son's cohort, again, my son's going to be 17, very, very different than you or I. They demand transparency. They demand the idea of, hey, we're all a part of this. And the more information I have, the better I'm going to be, because I'm going to understand all the whys, a single why. And that's something that I think is a big shift in leadership. The idea that, hey, you know what, we should be far more flat in terms of information transfer. You could still have a hierarchy. There should be, founders, and you can have that. Or, you can make it a week Apple did, where, kind of have the visionary at the heart of it and people radiating out from it. It doesn't really matter, right, the structure, but I think the information flow as a leader, I think modern leaders are going to be far more adept at, from day one, being, hey, this is what we're achieving. We're looking to achieve. Here's all the pieces to that. Here's how the pieces are integrated and interrelated. Again, and that, I'm sure, from the military, the car industry has suffered from this idea of siloed division, right? You can have situations where one part of the business or your organization is not with the other, and there's a lot of overlap that you didn't even know was there. And that's something that, again, if you're going to be efficient in building a winning company, a winning team, you need to maximize everybody's efficiency. And to do that, information sharing, greater integration, less silos, less hierarchy, I think is better for that. But it's challenging. It's definitely challenging.
Oh, that's very inspiring. Actually, one of my projects is to write a book on leadership, one of many books on leadership. So, but you say something that resonates a lot with me, with my idea, what actually could be a different approach to leadership. That this trying to, it's not just a spread of information, but it's more like coaching style leadership, and these kind of things. So, Jason, I really want to thank you for your time, for having been with us, for your honesty, your wisdom, your experience, and everything you told us.
Thank you.
I know you're very busy, so I appreciate twice.
So much. This is a lot of fun. Thank you so much.